The parables are stories that Jesus told to communicate truth. And the particular parable from today's Mass, from Matthew 25, is a very curious one. I've read lots of biblical commentaries about this parable, and here's what it seems to be about. It's about the necessity of us doing our part. God does God's part, and we also have to do our part. So let's explore this parable, all right? What do the various elements and symbols in the parable refer to? First of all, the marriage feast in the story represents the everlasting life of heaven. The bridegroom is Jesus Christ. The arrival of the bridegroom is God's judgment as to whether someone goes to heaven or to hell. And the 10 virgins in the story are people who are already baptized and members of the church. And the lamps that they carry represent the light of faith. Now, what does the oil symbolize? That's a really important element of this, the symbolism of this parable. The oil is our part. It's the part that each one of us has to do and that nobody else can do for us. That includes things like prayer, obedience to God's commandments, sacrifices for the good of others, putting love into action, carrying out the works of mercy, doing acts of penance, and self-discipline. All of those things are our part. You can't delegate that to somebody else. Those are things that all of us as children of God are called to do. Now, the foolish virgins in the story, who brought no oil with them, say, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." And the Lord responds, "I do not know you." This calls to mind another passage earlier in Matthew's Gospel, which is Matthew 7:21, where Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." So the lamp of faith is lit in your soul when you get baptized. But that lamp needs to be fed with oil if it's going to keep burning. And if we don't keep the lamp burning with oil, then the flame of faith will die. The book of James speaks very clearly about this. In James chapter 2, he says, "You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I by my works will show you my faith." With Abraham, faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works. A man is justified by works and not by faith alone. So faith apart from works is dead. That comes from the Bible, from James chapter 2. And that message matches the message of today's parable from Matthew chapter 25. We should also look at the last part of this same chapter 25 of Matthew's Gospel in order to understand fully what this parable is getting at. And in the very last part of Matthew 25, Jesus teaches about what will happen at the last judgment. He says that all human beings who have ever lived will be judged by the Son of Man. Some will go to eternal life, and some will go to eternal punishment. And what are the criteria upon which that judgment is made? Not according to whether or not the person had faith. The judgment is made according to whether or not we have done our part to help people in need. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me, etc. Those are all good works, acts of mercy. They're examples of the active practice of love. Over and over again in the New Testament, Jesus teaches that there is a real possibility that some people, through the choices they make, might not go to heaven. Now, Christ does not lock anybody out of heaven. Individual souls lock themselves out by their own behavior, by the choices that they make. Jesus saves us by His grace, and He also expects us to cooperate with His grace. And that means doing our part. This involves keeping the flame of faith alive all the days of our life by nourishing that flame through the oil of prayer, obedience, sacrifice, penance, self-discipline, and active, practical love for the good of other people. When we do that, it doesn't matter whether our life is long or short. It doesn't matter whether death comes unexpectedly or not. We will be living in such a way that we are always ready to meet our Maker. None of us knows the day or the hour, but that's okay, as long as we keep that oil flowing by the way we live. God does God's part, and we have to do our part. As Jesus says in Matthew 24, verse 13, the one who perseveres to the end will be saved.